Hello and welcome to the Night Watch. This episode will focus on my reaction, and I think many people's reactions, on the very recent arrest of the remaining complicit officers, at least that we know of as of now. There could be more, but the arrest of the known complicit officers regarding the murder of Mr. George Floyd recently in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And initially, my reaction is very relieved that they are arrested and locked up, and very hopeful that they're locked up in the traditional way that murderers and those complicit in murders are, without any special privileges and treatments and luxuries, but they're truly locked up as they should be as murderers. However, as I think a little more deeply about it, while there is, of course, relief, and I know that the family of Mr. George Floyd are also very relieved in the fact that the complicit officers are in jail now, the other side of the story is it's very hard to thank the police in Minneapolis and the prosecutors and the criminal justice system for essentially doing their job and doing it after so much time. So all I can say is, with some sarcasm, unfortunately, thank you, police, and thank you, prosecutors, for, after a very extended period of time, after we all watched on television and on video the cold-blooded, calculated, methodical, evil murder of Mr. George Floyd, thank you, after several weeks, for finally charging and arresting those who we witnessed on video commit and be complicit in this awful, outrageous, egregious murder. Thank you for doing your job. And that's the point I'm trying to make. How do you thank an agency? How do you thank the prosecutorial body for doing what they're sworn to do and what took them so long to do? And is it a fact that anyone who commits a murder in Minneapolis, or that's complicit in a murder in Minneapolis, has 2 or 3 days or a few weeks of some downtime to gather their thoughts and prepare psychologically and think things through in preparation for eventually being charged and locked up in jail? Is that kind of the rule that everyone is subject to in Minneapolis, that even if someone is caught committing a murder or being complicit to a murder that is on video, that is on television, that is very obvious what happened, that has plenty of witnesses present, including law enforcement officers witnessing it, including a Minneapolis firefighter witnessing it, that you still get a few days or a few weeks downtime before you're arrested? Or are you immediately, instantaneously handcuffed and locked up? I think it's the latter. I think that anyone else that did that on television would have been arrested on the scene, or at least shortly thereafter, meaning minutes or hours, all of them involved. And so that is the ultimate question. Is it a fact that police officers around America have a higher burden of guilt and to arrest and charge than anyone else? And thank you, prosecutors and law enforcers and criminal justice system, for coming to the same conclusion that all of us that are not lawyers and that are not prosecutors came to the first time we watched the video and we saw the murder and we realized that really that is murder one. Thank you for eventually coming to the conclusion, first murder 3 and now murder 2, which is certainly heading in the right direction. But why did it take so long to come to the conclusion that the rest of America came to in about 9 minutes in watching the video? So I don't get a lot of this. I'm glad that the outcome is progressively improving to some extent. That is good news. I believe, as do many, that it should truly be murder 1, because it seems clear that the intent was to kill. It's hard to imagine the intent not being to kill. And I think anyone else, not a police officer, who did that on video that the police had a copy of, would have been charged with murder 1 and arrested on site. So I just want to make that point. Now, quickly to shift gears, that is positive news that the officers are arrested. There may be others that should be investigated. We need to look back at the history of these officers and see what other crimes they have committed, because it was such a cold and calculated and calm murder by so many officers, and I'm not sure that all those officers even work together daily on a regular basis, or were just randomly at the same scene at the same time, as often happens when responding to various types of calls. But they all reacted so calm and cool, like it was just no big deal. And that seems to imply that for officers that have been with the department for years or even decades, there's probably a trail of tragedy, of bodies, of people locked up in prison that didn't have the benefit of video and that were labeled as resisting arrest and threatening the lives of officers, and were shot down or locked up and labeled as a hardened criminal, when in fact that's completely far from the truth. And by the way, if the police murder someone, it doesn't matter whether the person is intoxicated, whether they're sober or drunk, whether they're using cannabis or not, whether they have drugs in their system or not, whether they have a heart condition or not. If you murder someone, you murder someone. And if the average person goes out and shoots someone, for example, and the person doesn't die immediately from the bullet wound, but they die moments later because they go into cardiac arrest because they were shot and they just happen to have high blood pressure and some heart problems, and so they die of heart problems, that doesn't mean we don't charge the shooter because the person had heart problems and so that's a factor in the death. No, the factor in the death is the bullet. The factor in the death is the knee on the neck and mechanical asphyxia, suffocating in a just heinous murder scene, Mr. George Floyd. That's the cause of death. It doesn't matter what's in the body. It doesn't matter what health conditions are there. It's the act of murder that matters. It's the intent to kill that matters. It's the ignoring the "I can't breathe, you're killing me, I'm going to die, please" from Mr. George Floyd and others, and firefighter even that was there. And apparently even a police officer tried to have the body turned while Mr. George Floyd was alive, to have him turned on his side and check his pulse and etc. So bottom line, I just don't understand this focus on underlying medical conditions. I think it's irrelevant. If you walk up to somebody and murder them in any way, it doesn't really matter what health problems they had. If you killed them, you killed them. If they died a bit faster or in any case, if they died easier, I could say, because they had some underlying health condition. Let's say someone's got cancer and they're in final stages of some type of terminal cancer, and you shoot them or you drown them. You can't say, oh, well, they had cancer, so that's part of the reason they drowned as quick as they did. It's just not relevant. If you kill someone, you kill someone. You've killed them. That's murder, period. Very, very clear. Very clear, and that's a standard that the rest of America is held to. Law enforcement, if anything, should be held to a higher standard. So just shifting gears really quick, it was great to have the Pentagon go on record in a press conference that from the Secretary of Defense himself, essentially expressing their empathy with the situation at hand involving the murder of Mr. George Floyd. And it's very important that Mr. Esper did that, and it's great that he did that. I would say that it is unfortunate on the timing that it happened after nationwide protests, and not even then, after deployment of the National Guard, not even then, after threats to deploy active duty military on American streets, not even then, but only after a scandal involving the Secretary of Defense, Mr. Esper, when the peaceful protesters outside of the White House were attacked by police. That is when this press conference occurred. It was great to have the press conference. It was very important for our hundreds and thousands of service members, women and men of all ethnicities and races and religions that protect and serve and put their lives on the line for America. It was great for them to hear the Pentagon stand behind Mr. George Floyd and the outrage over the situation, but it's very unfortunate this was not until after all of that happened. Still, it's good that it happened. I do believe it's possible Mr. Esper wasn't aware of the fact that the police would attack the protesters, although the Secretary of Defense is not a lone wolf actor. The Secretary of Defense has an entourage, has a team, has security, has advisors, has senior officials, and truly should know what's going on. But I do believe it's possible, really, that he is telling the truth and that he was unaware that that would happen. That is possible. At the same time, it's quite scary to think that if we had a war in real battle space, not against our own citizens, but with another country, if there's an inbound missile and we go to some type of full-scale war, what's going to happen between the Secretary of Defense, the Pentagon, and the White House and their communication gaps if it's this hard to communicate over a photo op and having peaceful protesters attacked by police right outside the White House? How hard is it going to be to respond and react in case of a true battle space war, not a battle space involving our own citizens, as Mr. Esper referred in discussions recently, and he later regretted using that term in any case. But I am very happy that the institution of the Pentagon did go on record with their position. Overall, there's a lot of healing that needs to happen in America and a lot of transformation that needs to occur in America. And among those transformations, it really all starts with law enforcement, with the criminal justice system, which includes prosecutors, which includes police officers, politicians, and even judges. And the problem is this: I believe I can tell you with certainty that in each police department, there are officers who are just bad. They're the wrong people to be police officers. They're either twisted or evil or power tripped out or racist or something's wrong with them. They're there for the wrong reasons. They are corrupt in various ways and they shouldn't be there. And the part that I can promise you with, I think, 99.9% certainty in all of those cases, there are good officers as well that are aware of those situations specifically, but they cannot act, they cannot report it, because doing so, they put themselves in immediate danger, whether it be career-wise, whether it be physical, personal danger. The culture and the environment of law enforcement is not conducive to reporting immoral, unethical, even illegal criminal of other officers. The culture and the environment of law enforcement is to remain silent, the code of silence, and protect other officers no matter how bad and evil and twisted and murderous they may be. And that has to change, because in every police department, there are good cops that know what's going on that's wrong and could easily report it. But of course, those they're reporting it to are probably going to ignore it, suppress it, and retaliate and let everyone know who reported it. And so they just can't do anything about it. There are plenty of good cops out there. So we need to change all of this. To do that, we need strong leadership that will support the transition. And with the right leadership, which is police chiefs, it is majors, it's lieutenants, it's captains, it's officers, it's mayors and governors and senators, and it's POTUS. It's everybody being aligned to fix this problem in America. We cannot be, in the year 2020, having sworn police officers we're paying with our tax dollars to protect and serve citizens and people of America, murdering our people on video with calm and with no concern, and random officers responding also there without concern and with calm, with complicity, and nobody doing anything about it. The way that video should have ended by officers grabbing inmate Chauvin, throwing him to the ground, handcuffing him, arresting him, and saving the life with CPR immediately of Mr. George Floyd. That should have been how that video ended. It would be a completely different story, a completely different outcome, a completely different news line of how officers stepped up to the plate, arrested the twisted criminal officer in the act of murder stopped the murder and saved the life of Mr. George Floyd. That would have been the storyline instead of everybody standing around letting him be murdered. And I sure hope that charge gets upgraded to murder one, because it's very clear, in my opinion, that the intent was there. And murder two lacks the intent element. Murder one has intent. It sure seems like intent when you're killing someone, when they say you're killing me and I can't breathe, when everyone around you is saying they can't breathe, you're killing them. When the firefighter is saying it, and 9 minutes, and there's no intent, there's intent. Hopefully the prosecutors will upgrade to murder one, and they may. I just don't know why it's so hard and so slow and so long to do this, when I'm pretty sure that if any other citizen murdered someone on television or on video, they'd be arrested right on scene, especially when there's police officers already there witnessing it, and video and body cam video that, by the way, we haven't seen, which I sure hope is released soon, because I have a feeling whatever's on that body cam coverage is probably much worse than what we've seen, and the audio needs to be there so we can hear what was said. And I think it's very possible others are complicit in this crime that have not yet been implicated, and I sure hope there's a complete investigation and not simply an attempt to put out the fire, but a true dedicated effort to root out the racism, the criminality of that police department. And around the country, police chiefs of America, now is your time to set the record straight, to fix these problems, and to get rid of the bad actors within your departments. A lot of police officers that are dirty also collaborate with prosecutors who are dirty and share information and do each other's favors and cover for each other. And this can even involve judges in some cases. It all needs to be fixed. It takes strong leadership from the top, from the bottom, from the middle. Let's do it. It can be done. I would really love to see part of the legacy of Mr. George Floyd involve finally righting these wrongs, overcoming this mass injustice and murderous behavior and corruption that has probably gone on longer than our lifetimes in America, and it's now time to stop it. Thank you for joining this episode of The Night Watch Show.